I kept my eyes fixed on the cranberry sauce as my husband Marcus's voice carried across the table, entertaining our 12 dinner guests with another story about my supposed failures. And then, this is the best part, she actually thought she could run a consulting firm, Marcus said, gesturing dramatically with his wine glass. Lost everything within 6 months. Had to come crawling back to reality. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Polite laughter rippled through the dining room. I could feel eyes on me, some pitying, others embarrassed on my behalf. I took a slow sip of water, letting the moment wash over me like I'd done countless times before. Marcus, maybe we should talk about something else, his mother Gloria suggested weakly from across the table, though her tone carried more obligation than genuine concern. Oh, come on, Mom. Diana knows I'm just teasing. Marcus reached over and patted my hand condescendingly. Don't you, honey? I forced a small smile, the same one I'd perfected over 3 years of marriage. Of course. What Marcus didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the failed consulting firm was actually Meridian Strategic Group, a multinational consultancy with offices in 7 countries and annual revenues exceeding $400 million. The same firm that currently held the majority shares in Tech Venture Capital, the venture capital fund that owned 63% of Marcus's precious startup, Next Gen Solutions. The same startup he believed he'd built from the ground up. The same startup that would cease to exist by Monday morning. I mean, Diana's great at other things, Marcus continued, warming to his audience. His business partner, Brad, sat to his right, nodding along enthusiastically. She makes an excellent Thanksgiving dinner, don't you think, everyone? More murmured agreement. I watched Brad's wife, Jennifer, shift uncomfortably in her seat. She at least had the decency to look embarrassed. Remember when she wanted to pitch that business idea to my investors? Marcus was on a roll now, emboldened by the wine and the attention. What was it again, honey? Some kind of business development platform? Strategic integration software, I said quietly. Right, Marcus laughed. The investors literally laughed her out of the room. I was so embarrassed I had to apologize for days. What actually happened in that room was quite different. I'd pitched the software under my real identity, Alexandra Meridian Chen, and those same investors had written a check for $12 million on the spot. The software now powered the back end of 17 Fortune 500 companies. Marcus had been there, but he'd been so busy networking in the corner with junior associates that he'd missed the entire presentation. When I'd come home that night and told him the pitch had failed, he'd believed me without question. It was easier that way. Safer. At least she's good at the domestic stuff, Gloria chimed in, attempting to salvage what she perceived as my dignity. This turkey is absolutely divine, Diana. Thank you, I murmured, cutting a small piece of the bird I'd spent hours preparing. Not because I had to, but because it was part of the role I'd been playing for 3 years. The role that was about to end. My phone buzzed silently in my lap. I glanced down discreetly at the message from Veronica, my chief legal officer, and the only person outside my inner circle who knew my true identity. Everything in position. Documentation filed with the court at 4:47 p.m. News will break Monday 9 a.m. EST. Board meeting set for 8 a.m. Enjoy your turkey. I allowed myself the smallest smile before taking another bite. What's funny? Marcus asked sharply, his tone shifting. He hated when I smiled without explanation, as if I might be having thoughts he couldn't control. Nothing, I said. Just a happy memory. Well, share it with the group, he pressed. I looked up at him, at this man I'd once thought I loved, this man I'd tested by hiding my success, this man who'd failed that test spectacularly. I was just thinking about how much things can change in a single day. Philosophical tonight, are we? He smirked. That's what happens when you have too much time on your hands and no real career. You start thinking deep thoughts. His business partner Brad nearly choked on his wine trying to suppress a laugh. Marcus's college friend Derek, sitting with his wife Amanda, at least had the grace to look down at his plate. Speaking of careers, Brad said, recovering. Marcus, when are you going to tell everyone the big news? Marcus's face lit up. This was the moment he'd been building toward all evening, I realized. The grand announcement. Well, since you brought it up, Brad. He stood up, tapping his fork against his crystal wine glass. The glass from the set I'd purchased from an artisan in Venice, paid for with money from a deal Marcus knew nothing about. Everyone, I have an announcement, Marcus declared. As of last week, Next Gen Solutions has been valued at $150 million in our Series C funding round. Gasps and congratulations erupted around the table. Gloria clasped her hands together, tears in her eyes. Marcus, that's wonderful. There's more, Marcus continued, beaming. We're projecting to go public within 18 months. And when we do, well... He paused for dramatic effect. Let's just say we'll be looking at a valuation north of $500 million. More cheers, more congratulations. Derek stood to shake Marcus's hand. Even Jennifer managed a smile, though she still wouldn't quite meet my eyes. And Diana, Marcus said, turning to me with exaggerated magnanimity. Once we go public, you'll never have to worry about your little business failures again. You can just relax and enjoy being married to a successful man. The table fell silent, everyone waiting for my reaction. I could feel the weight of their expectations, that I should be grateful, that I should gush with pride, that I should thank my husband for his generosity in supporting my pathetic existence. Instead, I stood up calmly and began clearing plates. Diana, honey, don't you have anything to say? Marcus pressed, annoyed that I wasn't playing along with his fantasy. I paused at the doorway to the kitchen, arms full of dishes. Congratulations, Marcus. I'm sure everything will work out exactly as you planned. The truth was, I knew every detail of that Series C funding round because I'd orchestrated it. The lead investor was a shell company controlled by Meridian Strategic Group. The valuation of $150 million was accurate, but what Marcus didn't know was that the terms of the investment included provisions that would trigger upon certain conditions being met. Conditions that had been met yesterday at 11:43 a.m. when Marcus signed what he thought was a routine operational agreement. Conditions that gave my company complete control over Next Gen Solutions effective Monday morning. In the kitchen, I set the dishes in the sink and allowed myself a moment to breathe. 3 years of this charade. 3 years of playing the supportive, unsuccessful wife. 3 years of watching the man I'd married for love transform into someone who valued me only as an accessory to his ego. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I'd met Marcus at a tech conference in San Francisco. I'd been on a panel about emerging markets in Asia, though I'd participated via video under my business identity. Afterward, I'd wandered the conference floor in casual clothes, just another attendee, and Marcus had literally bumped into me, spilling coffee on my shirt. He'd been charming then, apologetic, funny, seemingly genuine. We'd talked for hours about technology, innovation, and our dreams for the future. He'd told me about his startup idea, the one that would eventually become Next Gen Solutions, and I'd been impressed by his passion, if not entirely convinced by his business model. We'd dated for 6 months before I'd made the decision to hide my identity. By then, I'd already seen the warning signs. The way he'd dismissed a waitress who'd gotten his order wrong, the condescending tone he'd used with a female engineer who'd challenged his technical assumption at a meetup, the subtle but growing need to be the smartest person in every room. So I'd tested him. I'd told him I was just a mid-level consultant at a small firm, that I made decent money but nothing spectacular, that I rented a modest apartment and drove a practical car. I'd wanted to see if he could love me without the trappings of success, without the private jets and the penthouse views and the power that came with my real identity. For a while, he'd seemed to pass the test. He'd been supportive during our engagement. He'd helped me move into the house we'd bought together, the house that was actually owned by one of my holding companies, but appeared on paper to be a joint purchase within our means. The wedding had been beautiful, intimate, exactly what I'd wanted. For the first year of marriage, things had been good. Not perfect, but good enough that I'd started to think maybe I'd been wrong about him. Maybe he really was the man I'd fallen in love with. But then Next Gen Solutions had started to take off. And as Marcus's startup grew, thanks in no small part to the strategic investors I'd quietly directed his way, so did his ego. The supportive husband who'd encouraged my consulting career became the dismissive partner who rolled his eyes when I talked about work. The man who'd once listened to my ideas became the man who interrupted me at dinner parties to explain basic business concepts I'd forgotten more about than he'd ever learn. And the worst part? He'd become cruel. Not physically, never that. But the small cuts, the constant belittling, the public humiliation disguised as teasing, it had worn me down in ways I hadn't expected. Some nights, I'd lie awake in our bedroom and wonder if this was what my mother had meant when she'd warned me that hiding your true self would eventually destroy you from the inside out. But my mother had also taught me something else: patience. She'd built her own fortune from nothing, survived in a world that didn't want women like her to succeed, and she'd done it by being smarter than everyone who underestimated her. "Diana!" Marcus's voice called from the dining room. "We're ready for dessert." I pulled the pumpkin pies from the oven, made from scratch, because that's what the domestic version of me would do, and arranged them on serving platters with fresh whipped cream. When I returned to the dining room, the conversation had shifted to Marcus's plans for the company. Brad was talking about their new office space, a gleaming tower in the financial district that would cost them $3 million a year in rent. "And the best part," Marcus was saying, "is that we'll have the entire 20th floor, corner offices for both Brad and me, and a view that'll make our competitors weep." "What about the rest of the team?" Derek asked. "You've got what, 60 employees now?" 72, Brad corrected. "And yeah, we'll need to optimize the space, but the executive floor is non-negotiable. When you're courting the kind of investors we're courting, you need to project success." I set a slice of pie in front of Marcus. "The rent on that space seems quite high," I said quietly. "Have you stress-tested the cash flow projections?" The table went silent. Marcus stared at me like I'd just spoken in Mandarin. "I'm sorry." "What?" he said slowly. "The rent," I repeated, keeping my voice level. $3 million a year is significant. I was just wondering if you'd modeled different scenarios to ensure the company can sustain that expense if revenue projections don't meet expectations. Marcus's face flushed red. "Diana, sweetie, this is business. You wouldn't understand the complexities." "I understand that fixed costs create risk," I continued, unable to stop myself now. "Especially in a growth stage company where revenue can be volatile. A more conservative approach might be to—" "Diana." Marcus's voice had gone cold. "Stop. I'm just trying to help." "You're embarrassing yourself," he cut me off. "You don't know anything about running a successful business. Your consulting firm failed, remember? Maybe stick to what you're good at and let the adults handle the business discussion." The silence that followed was excruciating. I could see Gloria looking at her plate, her face tight with secondhand shame. Jennifer had her hand over her mouth. Even Brad looked uncomfortable, though he'd been laughing at similar comments all evening. Derek's wife Amanda spoke up softly. "I think Diana raised a valid point." "Amanda, respectfully, you're a teacher," Marcus interrupted. "This is high finance. It's complicated." "Marcus," Derek said, his voice carrying a warning. "What? I'm just being honest." Marcus took a large bite of pie. "Diana means well, but she doesn't have the education or experience for this level of business strategy. It's not an insult. It's just reality." I stood up slowly, setting my napkin on the table. "Excuse me, I need some air." I walked through the kitchen and out onto the back patio, closing the glass door behind me. The November air was cold against my skin, but I welcomed it. I needed the clarity. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Veronica. "Are you okay? Say the word, and I'll burn it all down tonight instead of Monday." I smiled at that. Veronica had been with me since the beginning, since I'd started Meridian Strategic Group in a tiny office above a dry cleaner in Queens. She'd been my first hire, my closest confidant, and the person who'd held me when I'd cried about Marcus 2 months ago, finally admitting that the experiment had failed catastrophically. "I'm fine," I typed back. "Stick to the plan. Monday morning. He doesn't deserve your patience." "No," I agreed. "But I deserve to do this right." Behind me, I could hear the muffled sounds of conversation resuming in the dining room. Marcus's voice, loud and confident, holding court. It struck me that he'd gotten worse over the past year, more openly contemptuous. I'd initially attributed it to stress, to the pressures of running a startup. But the truth was simpler and sadder. Success had revealed who he really was. Or maybe I'd been wrong from the start. Maybe the charming man at the conference had been the mask, and this cruel, belittling version was the real Marcus. Maybe I'd seen what I wanted to see, ignored the red flags because I'd been tired of being alone. Tired of being Alexandra Meridian Chen, the brilliant businesswoman who couldn't find a partner who wasn't intimidated by her success. So I'd hidden that success, and look where it had gotten me. The patio door slid open behind me. I tensed, expecting Marcus, but it was Derek who stepped out. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. I shook my head, and he came to stand beside me at the railing, looking out over the darkened yard. "He's gotten worse," Derek said after a moment. "Marcus, I've known him since college, and he's always been competitive, always needed to be the smartest guy in the room. But this," he gestured back toward the house, "this is something else." "Yes," I said simply. "For what it's worth, I thought your point about the office space was valid," Derek continued. "I mentioned something similar to him last month, actually. He shut me down the same way." "What did he say?" Derek gave a rueful laugh. "That I think small because I work in academia. That if I understood real business, I'd have started my own company instead of teaching physics. I'm sorry. Don't be. I happen to love teaching physics." He paused. "Amanda wanted me to tell you that if you ever need anything, a friend to talk to, a place to stay, whatever, we're here. No questions asked." I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thank you, Derek. That means more than you know." "Marcus is my friend. Or at least he was," Derek said carefully. "But what he's doing to you isn't right. The way he talks to you, about you. It's not okay." "I know." We stood in silence for a moment. Then Derek said, "Can I ask you something? That business point you made about the rent and cash flow, where did that come from? Because it wasn't the kind of thing someone without business experience would think to ask." I looked at him, this man I'd known for 3 years as Marcus's college friend, and made a decision. Let's just say I'm not quite what I appear to be. Derek studied my face. "I don't think you ever were." Before I could respond, the patio door slid open again. This time it was Marcus, and he was annoyed. "Derek, your wife is looking for you," he said shortly. "Diana, we're ready for coffee." Derek squeezed my shoulder briefly before heading back inside. Marcus lingered, his expression hard to read in the dim light from the house. "You made me look bad in there," he said. "I asked a business question." "You embarrassed me in front of my partner and my investors. Derek's brother-in-law is considering putting money into our Series D. Do you have any idea how important it is that we look like a solid team?" "I'm sorry," I said, the apology tasting like ash in my mouth. "Are you, though?" Marcus moved closer. "Because lately, it seems like you're trying to, I don't know, prove something. Like you're jealous of my success." "I'm not jealous." "Then what is it?" "Because the Diana I married was supportive. She understood that my career had to come first while we're in growth mode. She didn't try to undermine me with half-baked business theories." I turned to face him fully. "Is that what you think happened in there? That I was trying to undermine you? What else would you call it?" "I would call it asking a legitimate question about financial risk management, which, for the record, is something any serious investor would ask." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "There you go again. Diana, you couldn't even keep a small consulting firm afloat. NextGen Solutions is valued at $150 million. We have professional CFOs, financial analysts, entire teams dedicated to this stuff. We don't need business advice from someone who couldn't manage 3 clients and a part-time assistant." The urge to tell him the truth was overwhelming. To watch his face as I explained that his $150 million company was actually my $150 million company. That every major decision he thought he'd made had been guided by my hand through carefully placed advisors and board members. That the professional CFOs he was so proud of reported ultimately to me. But I held back, because Monday morning would be so much sweeter. "You're right," I said instead. "I don't know what I was thinking." "Good." Marcus's posture relaxed slightly. "Look, I know I can be harsh sometimes, but it's only because I want what's best for us. Once NextGen goes public, you'll see. Everything will be different. You'll never have to work again if you don't want to. We'll have everything we ever dreamed of." Everything he ever dreamed of, I thought. Not me. "Come on," Marcus said, his tone softening into what he probably thought was kindness. "Let's go back inside. I'll make sure everyone knows you were just being curious, not trying to, well, you know." I followed him back into the house, back into the role I'd been playing for 3 years. The good wife, the failed entrepreneur, the woman who should be grateful for her successful husband's tolerance. Coffee was served, dessert was finished. The conversation moved to safer topics. Holiday plans, Gloria's upcoming cruise, Derek's latest research paper. I smiled and nodded in the right places, refilled cups when they ran empty, played my part perfectly. It was nearly 11 when the guests finally began to leave. Gloria hugged me tightly, whispering, "Don't pay any attention to Marcus's teasing, dear. He loves you very much." I hugged her back, feeling a pang of guilt. Gloria had always been kind to me. She didn't deserve what was coming, but she'd raised a son who thought it was acceptable to publicly humiliate his wife, and some of that had to fall on her shoulders too. Derek and Amanda were the last to leave. At the door, Amanda pulled me aside. "I meant what Derek told you earlier," she said quietly. "Call us if you need anything, okay?" "I will. Thank you." After they left, Marcus immediately loosened his tie and kicked off his shoes. "Thank God that's over. I thought Brad would never shut up about the new office space." I began gathering the remaining dishes from the dining room. Marcus collapsed on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "Oh, this is interesting," he said after a moment. "Derek's brother-in-law just emailed Brad. He wants to schedule a meeting next week to discuss the Series D investment." "That's good news," I said neutrally. "Yeah, no thanks to you." Marcus looked up from his phone. "Seriously, Diana, you need to be more careful. You can't just blurt out random business questions when important people are around. It makes us both look bad." "I understand." "Do you? Because I'm not sure you do." He set his phone down. "Look, I've been thinking. Maybe you should find something to do during the day, volunteer work or something. You have too much time on your hands, and it's making you, I don't know, restless." "I'll think about it." "Good." He picked up his phone again. "I'm going to be working late next week. We have the Series C closing documents to finalize, plus the new hiring plan for Q1. Don't wait up." "Okay." I finished clearing the table, loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the counters. The repetitive tasks gave me something to focus on besides the growing knot of anticipation in my stomach. By Monday morning, everything would be different. By Monday morning, Marcus would finally understand exactly who he'd been living with all this time. I wondered how he'd take it. Shock, certainly. Anger, definitely. But would there be any part of him, however small, that felt shame? That recognized how badly he'd misjudged me, how cruelly he'd treated me? Probably not. Men like Marcus rarely felt shame. They felt indignation, resentment, betrayal, anything except responsibility for their own actions. I finished in the kitchen and headed upstairs. Marcus was still on the couch, now on a video call with Brad, the two of them laughing about something. I caught fragments of the conversation as I passed. No idea what she was talking about. My wife does the same thing, thinks she understands business. Women, right? I closed the bedroom door behind me and leaned against it, finally allowing myself to feel the full weight of the evening. The humiliation, the condescension, the casual cruelty disguised as humor. My phone buzzed. A message from Margaret Chen, my mother. "How was Thanksgiving, darling?" I started typing a response, then deleted it. Started again, deleted again. Finally, I just called her. "Alexandra." She answered on the first ring. "I take it things didn't go well." "He told everyone about my supposed business failures," I said, sinking onto the bed. "In detail. In front of 12 people. Then he explained that I don't understand business and should stick to domestic duties." My mother was quiet for a moment. Then, "Are you still planning to wait until Monday?" "Yes." "You're stronger than I was," she said. "When your father tried to take credit for my work, I burned. His entire operation to the ground within 72 hours. I remember. Do you? You were only 8. I remember you explaining it to me later," I said. "You told me that revenge served hot is satisfying, but revenge served cold is devastating. That the key is to let them build their entire world on false foundations and then remove the foundations all at once. And is that what you've done?" "Yes," I said. Marcus's entire company, his entire identity, is built on investments and connections that ultimately trace back to me. He thinks he's a self-made success story. On Monday, he'll learn that he's been my puppet for 3 years. And how do you feel about that? I considered the question. Honestly, tired, sad, angry, but also ready. I'm ready for this to be over. What will you do after? After the divorce? After I take back control of Next Gen Solutions? I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I don't know. Maybe I'll stop hiding. Maybe I'll let the world know that Alexandra Meridian Chen and Diana Martinez are the same person. Maybe I'll buy an island and never deal with another person again. My mother laughed softly. You're too much like me to ever retreat to an island. You'll build something new, something bigger. You always do. Maybe. Alexandra. My mother's voice turned serious. Are you sure about the nuclear option? Once you trigger the provisions in the Series C agreement, there's no going back. Marcus will lose everything. Not just the company, but his reputation, his credibility in the industry. You'll destroy him. I know. And you're comfortable with that? I thought about the evening, about the laughter at my expense, about the 3 years of belittlement and dismissal, about the man I'd loved transforming into someone I didn't recognize. Yes, I said. I'm comfortable with it. Then I support you. But darling? Yes? Make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. Revenge for its own sake is hollow, but reclaiming what's yours, protecting your company, removing someone who's proven themselves unworthy of the power they've been given, that's justice. It's both, I admitted. Is that wrong? No, my mother said gently. It's human. Just make sure the revenge part doesn't consume you. You're better than that. Better than him. We talked for a few more minutes before saying goodnight. I changed into pajamas and brushed my teeth, going through the motions of normalcy even as my mind raced with thoughts of Monday morning. Marcus came upstairs around 1 a.m., stumbling slightly. He'd had more to drink than I'd realized. You awake? He mumbled, climbing into bed. Barely. Good. He rolled toward me, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath. I'm sorry if I was too hard on you tonight. You know I love you, right? The words should have meant something. Maybe 3 years ago they would have. But now they just felt empty, a reflex he'd learned to deploy when he'd pushed too far. I know. I lied. Everything's going to be amazing, Di. Once we go public, everything changes. We'll travel, buy a bigger house, maybe start thinking about kids. All your worries will just disappear. All my worries. As if my only concerns in life were financial security and social status. As if I didn't have a multinational company to run, investments to manage, responsibilities that dwarfed his little startup 100 times over. Go to sleep, Marcus, I said softly. He mumbled something else, already drifting off. Within minutes, he was snoring softly beside me. I lay awake in the darkness, listening to his breathing, and allowed myself to imagine Monday morning. The board meeting at 8 a.m. where I would reveal myself as the majority shareholder of Next Gen Solutions. The emergency session at 9 a.m. where the company's actual financial situation would be laid bare, how the inflated valuation was based on projections that would never materialize, how the Series C funding had come with strings that gave me complete operational control. By 10 a.m., Marcus would be removed as CEO. By 11 a.m., the news would hit the industry. By noon, his phone would be exploding with calls from investors, partners, everyone who'd celebrated his success at Thanksgiving dinner just hours before. And I would be in my real office, the one at Meridian Strategic Group's headquarters, finally operating as myself again. No more hiding. No more playing the unsuccessful wife. No more watching the man I'd married mock me for failures that didn't exist while taking credit for successes that were never his. I closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. My mind kept replaying moments from the evening, Marcus's cruel laughter, the pitying looks from our guests, the weight of maintaining my facade for one more night. Just one more night, I told myself. Tomorrow was Friday, the calm before the storm, and Monday would change everything. Friday morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Marcus left for the office at 7, kissing my forehead absently and reminding me to pick up his dry cleaning. I waited until his car disappeared down the street before allowing the mask to slip. I poured myself real coffee, the expensive Ethiopian blend I kept hidden in the back of the pantry, not the grocery store brand Marcus thought we could afford, and opened my laptop. My actual laptop, not the old one I used when he was home. 3 encrypted messages waited for me. The first was from Veronica. Legal confirms all documentation filed. Marcus signed the operational transfer agreement Wednesday at 3:22 p.m. He didn't read it. Neither did Brad. Their lawyer flagged 2 clauses, but they overrode him. We have everything. The second was from James Rothman, my CFO. NextGen's actual burn rate is $2.3 million monthly. Current runway, 4 months maximum. The Series C money is contractually restricted from covering operational shortfalls per clause, 7.3. They're already insolvent, they just don't know it yet. The third was from my mother. I'm proud of you. Call me Monday afternoon. I want to hear everything. I spent Friday working from my home office, my real office, the one Marcus had never been allowed to enter. He thought it was just a hobby room where I did freelance consulting work for small clients. In reality, it was a fully equipped command center with secure connections to Meridian Strategic Group's global operations. By noon, I'd reviewed quarterly reports from our Tokyo office, approved a $40 million acquisition in Berlin, and had a video conference with 3 board members about our expansion into Southeast Asia. The woman who'd served turkey and endured mockery last night was gone. This was Alexandra Meridian Chen, and she had an empire to run. Marcus called around 2. "Hey, can you grab steaks for dinner?" he asked without preamble. "Brad and I are celebrating. The Series D investor confirmed. Derek's brother-in-law is in for $20 million. My stomach tightened. That investment would never happen. By Monday, Derek's brother-in-law would be frantically calling his lawyers. "Sure," I said. "What time will you be home?" 7, maybe 8. We're having drinks with some potential new hires. VP-level talent, really impressive resumes. More people whose lives would be upended Monday morning. I felt a flicker of guilt, then remembered the laughter around the Thanksgiving table. The way Marcus had dismissed my very legitimate business concerns, the 3 years of systematic belittlement. "I'll have dinner ready," I said. "You're the best, babe." "Oh, and Diana, about last night. I know I can be rough sometimes, but it's only because I care. You understand that, right?" "Of course." After he hung up, I sat staring at my phone. This was Marcus's pattern. Push me down, then offer the smallest crumb of pseudo-affection to keep me compliant. It had worked for 3 years because I'd let it work, because I'd been conducting an experiment in human nature. The experiment was over. The results were conclusive. I spent the afternoon preparing, not steaks. I ordered those from the premium butcher Marcus didn't know I could afford, but documents, divorce papers, meticulously crafted by the best family law attorney in the state. financial disclosures that would reveal every asset, every holding company, every thread of the web I'd woven around Marcus's life. The papers would be served Tuesday morning, after he'd had 24 hours to absorb Monday's destruction. Marcus arrived home at 8:30, loud and jubilant. Brad was with him, equally drunk on wine and success. "Diana," Marcus called out. "Brad's staying for dinner. That okay?" I emerged from the kitchen, playing my role. Of course, I made extra. Brad had the decency to look slightly embarrassed after Thanksgiving's performance, but Marcus seemed to have forgotten entirely. They sprawled on the living room furniture, ties loosened, recounting their day. "The new VP of Engineering starts January 2nd, Marcus was saying. Stanford PhD, worked at Google and Meta. We're paying him $500,000 a year. Can the company afford that? I asked carefully, bringing them drinks. Marcus waved dismissively. We've got $150 million in the bank from Series C. We're fine. Not exactly true. The Series C money was there, but it was restricted. They could only use it for specific purposes outlined in the investment agreement, purposes that didn't include executive salaries above a certain threshold or office rent exceeding market rates. The new VP's salary would have to come from operating revenue. Revenue that was declining, not growing. Plus, the Series D is basically done, Brad added. 20 million more, probably closing in January. I set a plate of appetizers in front of them. That's assuming Derek's brother-in-law doesn't have second thoughts. Both men looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Why would he have second thoughts? Marcus asked slowly. We're a rocket ship, Diana. Investors are lining up. I just mean due diligence can reveal unexpected things, I said mildly. It's wise to not count on funding until it's actually in the bank. Jesus Christ, Marcus muttered. Brad, this is what I deal with. Constant pessimism. Can't just be happy about good news. I am happy, I lied. I'm just being cautious. You're being negative, Marcus corrected. There's a difference. Successful people think positively. Failed entrepreneurs. He trailed off meaningfully. Brad shifted uncomfortably. Hey man, maybe ease up. What? I'm just being honest. Marcus took a long drink. Diana had her chance in business. It didn't work out. That's fine. Not everyone has what it takes. But she needs to stop projecting her failures onto my success. I could have ended it right there. Could have told him everything, watched his face crumble as reality crashed down, but I held back. Monday would be public, professional, documented. This would be private, petty, forgotten by morning. You're right, I said quietly. I apologize. Over dinner, they talked strategy and expansion. They were planning to open offices in Austin and Seattle, hire 50 more people by Q2, and increase their burn rate by another $1 million monthly. It was financial insanity, and they were too drunk on success to see it. I wondered if Marcus would remember this dinner on Monday, if he'd recall how confident he'd been, how certain of his trajectory, how completely blind to the cliff he was approaching. Brad left around 11. Marcus lingered in the living room, scrolling through his phone with a satisfied smile. Come here, he said, patting the couch beside him. I sat, maintaining the careful distance that had become habitual. I know I'm hard on you sometimes, Marcus said, not looking up from his phone. But it's going to be worth it, Diana. Everything we've sacrificed, all the tough years, it's all paying off. Another 18 months, and we'll be rich beyond our wildest dreams. That's wonderful, Marcus. You don't sound excited. I'm tired, I said, which was true. 3 years of this exhaustion, this constant performance. It's been a long week. Yeah. I guess hosting Thanksgiving was a lot of work. He finally looked at me. "You did a good job, by the way. Everyone loved the food." "Thank you. And I'm sorry if I embarrassed you with the business talk. You know how I get when Brad's around. We just feed off each other's energy." He reached for my hand. "Forgive me." This was the part that made it hardest. These moments when he almost seemed like the man I'd married, when the cruelty softened into something resembling affection. But I'd learned these moments were just another form of control. Keep me off balance, never let me get angry enough to leave. "There's nothing to forgive," I said, extracting my hand. "I'm going to bed." The weekend passed in a blur of final preparations. Saturday, I had a video call with Veronica to review the timeline. Sunday, I reviewed every document one more time, checking for any possible flaw in our strategy. There were none. Marcus had walked into every trap voluntarily, signed every agreement willingly, made every arrogant assumption without question. Sunday evening, Marcus ordered pizza and settled in to watch football. I sat beside him, a notebook in my lap, pretending to make grocery lists while actually reviewing talking points for Monday's board meeting. "Big week ahead," Marcus said during a commercial break. "We're finalizing the Q1 hiring plan, and I've got 3 investor meetings. Brad and I are thinking about buying a beach house together as an investment property and company retreat. What do you think?" "Sounds nice," I said absently. "You could help decorate it. You're good at that domestic stuff." I hummed non-committally, my eyes on my notes. The board meeting was at 8 a.m. By 8:30, Marcus would be removed as CEO. By 9, the press release would go out. By 9:30, the industry media would be calling. By 10, everyone would know. "You're not even watching the game," Marcus complained. "Sorry, just planning the week." "What's there to plan? It's not like you have a job." I looked up at him then. Really looked at him. Comfortable on our couch in our house, watching our television, completely oblivious to the fact that none of it was actually his, that everything he thought he'd built was about to come crashing down. "You're right," I said softly. "I'll put this away." That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw tomorrow playing out in a dozen different scenarios. Marcus angry, Marcus devastated, Marcus finally understanding what he'd done, what he'd lost. My alarm went off at 5:30 Monday morning. Marcus was still sleeping, snoring softly. I dressed carefully in a charcoal suit from my hidden closet, the one where I kept my real wardrobe, the power suits and designer pieces that Alexandra Meridian Chen wore. I left the house at 6:15, leaving a note on the kitchen counter. "Early appointment. See you tonight." The Meridian Strategic Group headquarters occupied the top 15 floors of the Pinnacle Tower downtown. I'd owned the building for 6 years. Marcus had attended a conference here once and never made the connection. Veronica met me in my private elevator, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes bright with anticipation. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready?" The boardroom was already filling with members when we arrived. These were people Marcus had never met, directors who'd been carefully vetted and selected to guide next-gen solutions toward this exact moment. They stood as I entered, not because they had to, but because they respected what I'd built. "Good morning, everyone," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Let's begin." At 7:45, Marcus was in his own office across town, completely unaware that his board of directors was meeting without him. At 7:53, he sent me a text. "Don't forget the dry cleaning." I didn't respond. At 8 a.m. exactly, I called the meeting to order. As majority shareholder of Next Gen Solutions, operating through Tech Venture Capital and its associated entities. I'm invoking Clause 11.4 of the Series C investment agreement. Effective immediately, I'm exercising my right to assume direct operational control of the company. The vote was unanimous. It took 4 minutes. At 8:17, our general counsel, Patricia Wong, called Marcus. I listened on speakerphone as she delivered the news. Marcus's confusion was almost painful to hear. "I don't understand," he kept saying. "What meeting? What vote?" "I'm the CEO." "You were the CEO," Patricia corrected gently. "As of 8:04 this morning, you've been removed from that position pending a full audit of company operations and financial practices." "This is insane. Who authorized this? I'm calling our investors right now." "Mr. Martinez, your primary investor authorized this. Tech Venture Capital, which provided your Series C funding, is exercising its contractual rights as majority shareholder." "Then I'll call them. I'll fix this. There's been some kind of mistake." "There's no mistake. You'll receive official notification within the hour. I'd advise you to consult with your personal attorney." The line went dead. I imagined Marcus staring at his phone, his confident smile finally cracking. At 8:30, I called him directly. He answered on the first ring. Diana, something crazy is happening. My board they removed me. As CEO of my own company. This has to be a mistake, some kind of hostile takeover attempt. I need you to..." "It's not a mistake, Marcus." Silence. Then, "What?" "It's not a mistake. And it's not your company. It never was." "Diana, what are you talking about? I'm freaking out here. I need you to listen," I said, my voice steady. Tech Venture Capital, the fund that provided your Series C investment, is a subsidiary of Meridian Strategic Group. Meridian Strategic Group is my company, Marcus. I'm the founder and CEO. I've owned it for 12 years. More silence. I could almost hear his brain trying to process the information. That's not possible. You're a failed consultant. You couldn't even..." "I've never failed at anything," I interrupted. "I've been lying to you for 3 years. The consulting firm that supposedly failed? That was Meridian Strategic Group. We have offices in 7 countries and annual revenue over $400 million. Every major investor in next-gen solutions either is me or reports to me. You've been working for me the entire time." "No." His voice had gone hollow. "No, that's insane. You can't..." At 9 a.m., we're announcing that Next Gen Solutions is undergoing restructuring due to unsustainable burn rate and operational mismanagement. The press release will name you specifically. By 9:30, every investor, partner, and potential hire will know that you inflated projections, ignored financial warnings, and drove the company toward insolvency while paying yourself and Brad excessive compensation. "Diana." "My name isn't Diana. It's Alexandra. Alexandra Meridian Chen. You can Google me after we hang up." "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you do this?" "Do you really not know?" I asked. "Do you really not remember Thanksgiving dinner? The 3 years before that? Every time you dismissed me, belittled me, made me feel small in front of your friends and family?" "I was just teasing. I didn't mean..." "You meant every word," I said. "And now you're facing the consequences. Goodbye, Marcus." I ended the call and turned off my phone. Around the table, the board members were watching me with expressions ranging from approval to pity. "The press release is ready," Veronica said quietly. "On your word. Send it." At 9:03, the news hit. The tech industry media exploded. My phone, now back on, started ringing continuously. Messages poured in. some supportive, some shocked, some gleeful at seeing another tech bro's downfall. By 9:30, Marcus had called me 47 times. I didn't answer. At 10 a.m., I held a press conference in Meridian Strategic Group's main conference room. The room was packed with journalists who'd been investigating the story for hours. "My name is Alexandra Meridian Chen," I began. "For the past 3 years, I've been living under an assumed identity to conduct a personal experiment. I wanted to know if the man I'd married could love and respect me without knowing about my professional success." The cameras flashed. The questions came rapid fire. I answered them all honestly, holding nothing back. The humiliation at Thanksgiving dinner. The 3 years of systematic belittlement. Marcus's complete failure to see me as an equal partner worthy of basic respect. "Some will say this was cruel," I concluded, "that I should have just divorced him quietly. But Marcus didn't just disrespect me, he demonstrated a fundamental inability to run a company responsibly. Next Gen Solutions was headed toward bankruptcy under his leadership. The employees, the investors, the technology itself, all of it deserved better. This wasn't just personal, it was professional necessity." By noon, the story had gone viral. Alexandra Chen was trending on 3 platforms. Think pieces were being written. Some called me a vindictive ex-wife. Others called me a business hero. Most were just fascinated by the story itself. At 1 p.m., Derek called. "Is it true?" he asked without preamble. "All of it?" "Yes." He laughed, a sound of pure disbelief. "I knew you were more than you appeared. But this? Amanda and I are watching the press conference. It's incredible, Diana. Or should I say Alexandra?" "Alexandra," I confirmed. "And Derek?" "I'm sorry about your brother-in-law's investment. That won't be happening now." "Good," he said firmly. "I never thought it was a smart investment anyway. Marcus was always reckless, even in college. He just hit it better back then." He paused. "For what it's worth, you did the right thing. What he was doing to you, what I witnessed at Thanksgiving, that was abuse. Financial success doesn't excuse that. Thank you." At 2 p.m., my mother called. "How do you feel?" she asked. I considered the question. "Lighter," I said finally. "Like I've been holding my breath for 3 years and can finally exhale." "Good. That's good, darling. Now comes the hard part." "What do you mean?" "Rebuilding," she said. "Not the company, that's fine, but rebuilding yourself. You've spent 3 years hiding who you are. It will take time to fully step back into your identity. Be patient with yourself." She was right, I realized. Even now, hours after the revelation, part of me wanted to apologize, to soften the blow, to make Marcus feel better about his humiliation. The habits of 3 years didn't disappear in a single morning. At 4 p.m., Brad sent me an email. Not to my Diana email, but to my Alexandra Meridian Chen corporate account. He'd figured out how to find it. "Ms. Chen, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm begging you to reconsider. Marcus made mistakes, but he built something real. Next Gen Solutions has good technology, good people. Don't destroy it out of revenge. If you have to remove Marcus, I understand. But please consider keeping the company alive. There are 72 employees who did nothing wrong." Brad Stevenson. I wrote back immediately. "Mr. Stevenson, the company will survive. I'm installing a new CEO with actual operational experience. Every employee will keep their job, with the exception of yourself and Mr. Martinez. You'll receive severance packages per your contracts, though I'm sure you'll find them less generous than you expected. The technology is good. The people are talented. Only the leadership was toxic. We're correcting that. As for revenge, this was business. You both demonstrated incompetence at executive-level management. That's simply unacceptable in a company I own. Alexandra Meridian Chen. At 6 p.m., I finally went home. The house was dark. Marcus's car was gone. I found his note on the kitchen counter, his handwriting jagged and angry. I don't know who you are anymore. I'm staying at Brad's. My lawyer will be in touch. I crumpled the note and threw it away. Then I opened my laptop and filed the divorce papers I'd prepared on Friday. By morning, he'd be served. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings, media interviews, and corporate restructuring. Next Gen Solutions stabilized under new leadership. The employees, once they understood what had actually been happening, were mostly supportive. Several told me privately that they'd always felt Marcus was in over his head. The divorce was finalized in February. Marcus fought for alimony. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, but the prenuptial agreement I'd insisted on held firm. He walked away with nothing except his car and whatever personal items he'd accumulated during our marriage. Gloria called me once, crying. "I don't understand how this happened," she said. "Marcus is devastated. He really loved you." "Did he?" I asked gently. Or did he love having someone to look down on? Someone who made him feel superior? She had no answer to that. By March, my life had returned to something resembling normal. I no longer hid my identity. I no longer pretended to be less than I was. Alexandra Meridian Chen walked through the world openly, and it felt like coming home after a long, exhausting trip. Derek and Amanda invited me to dinner one evening. Over wine and pasta, Derek asked the question I'd been asking myself for months. "Was it worth it?" he said. "The 3 years of hiding, the experiment, all of it?" I thought about Thanksgiving dinner, about the laughter at my expense, about the moment I'd ended the call with Marcus, his world crumbling around him. "Yes," I said finally. Not because of the revenge, though I won't pretend that wasn't satisfying, but because I learned something important about myself. "What's that?" Amanda asked. "That I'm never hiding again," I said. "Not for anyone. Not for love, not for comfort, not for the hope that someone might accept me if I make myself smaller. I'm done with that." They raised their glasses. "To never hiding," Derek toasted. "To never hiding," I echoed. 3 months later, I received an email from an unexpected source. Marcus. "Alexandra, I know I don't deserve a response. I probably don't deserve your time at all. But I wanted you to know that I've spent the last 3 months in therapy trying to understand what happened. My therapist asked me to write down every time I remember disrespecting you. The list is over 4 pages long. I read it, and I couldn't believe that was me, that I'd become that person. You were right about everything. I was cruel. I was arrogant. I took credit for work that wasn't mine and destroyed something that could have been beautiful. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm sorry. I hope you're building something amazing. I hope you never have to hide again. Marcus." I read the email 3 times. Then I wrote back, "Marcus, thank you for the apology. I accept it, though I want you to understand that acceptance doesn't mean forgetting. I hope therapy helps you become a better person. Not for my sake. We're done, but for whoever comes next. They deserve better than what you gave me. I am building something amazing. I've been building it all along. You just couldn't see it. Take care of yourself." Alexandra, that evening, I stood in my real office, looking out over the city lights. Meridian Strategic Group was expanding into 3 new markets. We'd just closed a deal that would make us the largest independent consultancy in North America. Everything I'd built, everything I'd protected by hiding from Marcus, was thriving. My phone buzzed. My mother, texting a photo of her latest acquisition, a tech startup in Singapore that she'd just purchased. Learning from the best, she'd written. I smiled and texted back, "The student becomes the master." Then I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and allowed myself to simply exist in this moment. Not as someone's wife, not as a woman hiding her success, not as anyone except exactly who I was. Alexandra Meridian Chen, CEO, entrepreneur, empire builder, and finally, blissfully, myself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.